Hi and welcome. I'm Jennifer Britton, and I am the author of course, Effective Virtual Conversations. That is our topic this morning. I'm really excited. Today's topic is virtual and remote team tools. And as you might know, part 3 of Effective Virtual Conversations, so chapters 9, 10, 11, 12, really touch on the landscape of the remote and virtual team. I was very lucky to follow that up with my 2019 book, PlanDoTrack, which is a workbook planner geared for virtual and remote professionals. And as you'll hear this morning, I'm continuing to do work in this landscape. This, in fact, is where my roots were almost 30 years ago, way before the days of the internet, when I was leading teams across very remote parts of South America using long-range radio. So let's get started with today's topic. Really, it is an exciting era to be looking at remote and virtual work. It continues to grow and expand in leaps and bounds. I was seeing a figure the other day that an organization has tracked that remote work has grown by 159% since 2005. And I'm not surprised. More and more people are embracing the remote work style. More virtual teams are getting to be, and of course, that means that we need to do this more effectively. It has implications in terms of our styles and our approaches and the way we bring teams together. So I hope that in today's presentation, you will get some ideas. Just a reminder that I host these calls every month. You can find them on my YouTube channel, Jennifer J. Britton, as well as many other places. And last month, the focus here at Effective Virtual Conversations was keeping the conversation going. And you might have noticed that was the newsletter theme as well. We talked about different ways to keep the conversation going in between virtual calls. And I would say that these things are true and very important for virtual and remote teams as well. How are you using fieldwork, peer partners, intranets if you're internal, or perhaps Mighty Networks if you are external. We want to keep things visible. With our clients, with our teams, what are the things that are going to help keep things top of mind? And I'm really excited to be launching some new work within my sphere. I have a whole new body of work under the Remote Pathways umbrella. And this is some work I've been evolving over the last year. In a few weeks, I will be launching a new podcast with my co-host, Michelle Mullins. Michelle also works in the remote space, and we work with different types of remote workers. So she is based out of the US, I'm here in Canada. We both have different types of work, but in my writing, I've really been looking in the last few months at the different types of remote workers. So some of you might know that this past summer, 2019, July, I participated in a fundraising write-a-thon over the course of a weekend with 39 other writers. I started evolving this work, which is now known as Remote Pathways. It's all about the adventures of the digital dozen, and really want to introduce that to you. Stay tuned for their journeys. And really, it's all about the different landscapes. So some of you may be coming to remote work as a facilitator, a leader, a remotepreneur, maybe a project manager, a salesperson, maybe you work from anywhere, or you're a leader. You will meet the digital dozen as we go through the landscape. And again, check your podcast player. It will be launching mid to late November. Look for my name, and it's called Remote Pathways. That's the whole body of work. You know, I've been part of this landscape for almost 30 years now. I think what makes it really challenging is what I referenced 3 years ago in Effective Virtual Conversations. So I'm pulling this directly from EVC. And certainly some of the main challenges we see is our lack of everyday nonverbal face-to-face communication. While we have Skype, while we have WebEx, we may not be doing real-time work together. And that's where we do want to make sure that we are connecting in regularly with as much streaming as possible. It may not be comfortable to everyone, but it is definitely something we want to work towards. We also want to make sure that we are interacting socially, because certainly the loneliness factor is a key concern. Many remote workers today feel isolated. This is where routine, this is where other areas are so important. And this month I'm working on a guide for new remote workers. So if you have a lot of people working and getting up to speed, definitely reach out and get in touch with me. It's not a published resource yet. I'm writing it at the moment, but it should be available in early 2020 as a digital resource. And I think for those that are equipping or onboarding new remote workers, and for those that are setting up virtual and remote businesses, this is definitely going to be something that you want to check out. How do we keep building connections? How do we ensure that there's trust in a team? If we're managing a global team, how do we deal with the cultural clashes? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but every culture is different. We need to acknowledge how we operate and understand how we need to adjust our approaches. I say that having led global teams for a very long time, almost more than 15 years. Lack of team spirit as well, right? With remote and virtual teams, we can't come together for our potlucks, our water cooler talk. How do we associate with our team? And that means that we need to really build our team identity. So just a reminder, in terms of actual tools, which is a topic of today, we want to make sure that you go back to the basics. If you have a copy of Effective Virtual Conversations, check out the 24 different activities that I reference in chapter number 7. And when I say the different activities I reference, these are actually spelled out. So if you are looking for a book here at the end of the year, this might be a great book to add to your toolkit as well as your team's toolkits. It is available on Kindle as well as in hard copy form. Go to Amazon, amazon.ca, or your local Amazon, and pick up a copy for yourself and your staff. Today, I want to really dig into 6 areas that may help you as a team, and I would want to start the conversation off by getting you to think about what's important for you as an organization, for you as a business owner, if you're a solopreneur, or for your team. And we know that, it may be around strategy, getting clear on results, collaborating. It may be about acting on things or planning on things, scheduling things, getting things done, improving or checking things off. Those are all different activities. And here's what I would encourage you to think about. What is the best thing to do when you work with your team in that moment? This year, and I should have included it, I'll just put it down here on the screen now. This year, I've been doing a series of writings. So many of you know me as a writer. One other resource you might want to check out for different examples of how to work with teams in different ways. I've been doing a series around, let me just type this in, groupcoaching.blogspot.com. That is a group coaching ins and outs blog that I've hosted since 2005. This year, I'm doing a 52-week series on different coaching tools for working with teams and groups in different ways. And so definitely take a look at that, see what's important for you as a team. I'm exploring different activities, different questions, most importantly, that you may want to bring in to your conversation. Now, in addition to that, I continue to write in the Teams 365 blog. So this is a blog I started posting on daily. I host it over at my potentialsrealized.com site. I just want to clear the screen for a minute. And really what is, I think, valuable for you is that I've been doing a series of posts for remote team workers. So if you are getting started with remote work, here are 10 areas to consider. Check out Teams 365, blog post 2129. It is a great post for you to look at as you get started with your remote work. And that, remote work, going back to the digital dozen, we may be coming at remote work from the corporate realm, the voluntary sector realm. I may be a solopreneur running my own business. I may be a freelancer. I may be traveling and working. We are all part of the same ecosystem. And it's interesting because a lot of the systems we need to be successful are the same. And that is part of the parcel of work that I'm focusing on right now. Today, I want to take you into 5 different types of tools against this big landscape. What are some things that we want to do? And definitely we want to help teams focus. We want to build our team because, as I shared in Effective Virtual Conversations, only about 1 in 4 virtual teams actually get support. That's pretty astronomical. We're going to look today also at different ways to track goals and progress within a virtual or remote landscape, communication, and projects. Now, these are by no means comprehensive. There are lots of additional tools, but I really wanted to laser into a couple of ones that we can move the needle on. And the first one is focus, right? We are operating in an era of disruption, VUCA. disengagement, just, you know, so much noise in the landscape, so many emails coming at us, especially when we are remote. So what do? Well, we want to go back to the basics. And I think these are really important. You know, as different and distinct as a remote landscape is, it's all about simplification. It's about going back to the basics. Less is more. So to focus, we may want to go back to the basics around making sure that we're scheduling regular one-on-ones. When we don't see people in the lunchroom, in the hallways, it's really important that we make these not formalized, but we do make sure that we are proactive in scheduling these. They could be formal, but I think sometimes when we become formalized with activities, they become very boring and rudimentary. We just step into them. We want to make sure that these are spontaneous, these are very focused, and they are focused on the goals and objectives for the individual, the team, and the organization. One thing that is unique to the remote landscape is you have matrix relationships. So people on your team may be part of multiple teams. How do you keep communicating, if you're the leader, what the key priorities and focus areas are? We also want to make sure that we're keen on helping people identify what the roles are. Their role clarity is key, as is making sure that we give space for questions. And as one team member raises a question, how are we seeding that? How are we sharing that across the team? On a very individual level for the remote worker, how are we helping them to reduce distractions? What are we doing to help them focus in? And what feedback loops are we creating? So focus is key. If we are not focusing, what are we doing? And it's absolutely key when we are potentially on 24/7, especially if a team is global. The work around focus and boundaries becomes really key for ensuring that our teams and our remote workforce is running at peak condition. The second area I wanted to look at today is team development. And as you may have heard me say time and time again in the calls for effective virtual conversations, teams excel when they build results and they focus on building relationships. So within that framework, for years I've been sharing the 6 factors. They are spelled out in chapter 11 of Effective Virtual Conversations. But just a reminder that, you know, teams excel in person and virtually remote when they have a shared vision, when they understand what their goals are, when they understand how those goals are going to be measured. It's even more important to be clear and crystal clear on success measures and who we are and how we're operating. We need to ensure that we have clear roles and understand how I relate to another colleague who might be several time zones away. Are we clear on our team practices? Are we getting together in ways that are effective? Just a reminder, chapter 9 of Effective Virtual Conversations gets us into meeting management. Meetings are a team practice. Just because you're remote doesn't mean that you stop your team meetings. They might change. They might become perhaps a little quicker, a little more frequent, a little less frequent, more focused on sharing than tactical things, but keep the conversations going. And we know, again, that teams that excel are not only good at getting the work done, but also have the relationship focus. So within chapter 7, as well as multiple areas, like think about the exercises you can weave in. I talk a lot about what's beyond your screen, what's outside your window. We want to use activities, conversation starters to get people thinking about who is who and how can they operate. Now, part of the other work is also making sure that people have each other's backs. So what is the level of shared commitment in this work? Now, I wanted to draw in some specific examples. So this is quite small on your screen, but you can go to Teams 365, post 2130. And I've included in that blog post, which just was recently published, 3 activities that you can focus on to get to know each other. I talked about this, what's outside your window. Also said, like, use just your basic icebreakers. You know, who's wearing black shoes today? Who's got rubber bands on their desk? What are some things that are going to get people like getting to know each other? You may also want to focus in on areas that will help with focus. So you know my affinity for things like prioritization. This is why I wrote PlanDoTrack. So in PlanDoTrack, this is a workbook planner. It's geared for remote and virtual professionals. Just to go a little bit into it, because a lot of people say, well, it's a workbook. What do you mean by it's a workbook? It literally is a workbook which people can move through, self-study. There are stories, there are examples, there are questions, there are frameworks for you to be working through. That is the first 125 pages of this. The last half is a set of daily trackers. So you can see that I use this. I hold every month-end planning sessions, so you can drop in on those. And very much it is about getting you to take stock and have a plan. Planning is even more important a skill set when people are in the remote space. And of course, our staff may have lots of different preferences, but we aren't there to check in regularly. So how do we ensure that we are working with them to support their planning style? Paper-based may be valuable, as well as the analog. So this does not replace, this is what I like to say, this does not replace a daily planner. This is a supplement to it with focus on monthly, quarterly, and annual planning, as well as content. So it is a great resource. I think coming up to year end, $30. You know, you can, if you buy in bulk, you can probably get a lower price point around that. It is a great resource and gift for your team. Check on out at Amazon. So with that, think about the resourcing. Going to some very practical pages in section 4 of PlanDoTrack. I include a section on prioritization, go into a little bit more about the urgent, important matrix, provide you with some questions to look at it, as well as strategic issues mapping. So definitely take a look at PlanDoTrack and how that can be of service to you. We also want to make sure that in addition to the results, in addition to the focus, that teams are connected. And so check out blog post 2130. I will include a link attached to this just to give you some more ideas on ways to help teams connect. Sometimes it's as simple as giving people a chance to talk about, you know, their highlights. As we step into year end, what are the highlights? What have they been doing? What have they been focusing on? A third area, so we are leaving the landscape. We've looked again, of course, at like one-on-ones and focus. Now let's talk a little bit about goals and progress. And this really was the reason behind launching PlanDoTrack, writing and providing a planner for people to work with, because we do want to make sure that we are tracking things, making it very visible. I may have my own timeline, just like you can see here. Someone else on the team has another. Trackers are key, and this is a snapshot of one of the 12 monthly daily trackers that you can find at the back of PlanDoTrack and or Coaching Business Builder. With the monthly daily tracker, it is a way to really visually see what you've been focusing on. Again, in the landscape of the remote staff member, so much more important for us to be individually having the tools to track what we're doing. Where am I spending my time? If I'm on a team or if I'm a solopreneur, am I spending my time on program design? Am I spending my time on accounting? Am I spending my time on relationship building? Or am I spending my time on doing the work, right? These are all different things. So for progress, think about the trackers. And I would be more than happy, again, if you're looking for a speaker to work with your remote team, consider booking me for a session. Well, lots of different options there, but we could be talking about how do you help your team get tracking. This is an example of another type of tracker. Maybe you're developing content. Maybe you are a creative solopreneur. Part of what you're doing is building intellectual property. You might be tracking on a daily basis things like the content you created or the content you consumed, the content you curated that you pulled together. Maybe you're tracking the different quotes that you came across or tips. I like to really pick an annual project, right? And that's what we've been doing here at Potentials Realized. Every year has a bit of a different theme. This last year has really been focused a lot on the productivity lens. In this next year, I'll be focusing much more on the landscape of the digital and remote worker through the digital dozen. All of this adds up over time. A lot of people say, Jen, you are such a voluminous creator. And yes, this is part of the work that I love. I do a lot of work as well, but it feeds each other. So how can you have an annual focus to build incrementally? It's not huge swaths of work. As I say in PlanDoTrack and Coaching Business Builder, it is the daily steps plus consistent action, which creates its own momentum. A fourth area I wanted to give us some time to think about today is, of course, communication. And I think communication is the heart of any great, thriving team. We want to make sure that we're using all the tools at our disposal. And in the remote space, that might include having teams on Slack, using instant messaging, using your internal instant messaging system, using meetings, using one-on-ones. What else? Think about how you are constantly communicating, and think about whether it's the right vehicle, right? What is the right vehicle for the messages that you want to send out? Is it through perhaps something like an instant message, or do I need to pick up the phone? We need to get a little bit more discerning on how we are communicating. Just a reminder, I did a call recently on the 7 keys for effective meetings. Again, you can check that out. But key to effective meetings, we need to have engagement, we need to feel connected, we need to have trust, we need to have good design, we need to use our technology, we need to have good visuals, and we need to be nimble. I think this is really key, that we get meetings down. There are questions that we want to be asking, but also at the end of the day, how are we using the different tools, and is a meeting the best form? Even in the context of meetings, what is the best form in meetings as well? There are lots of roles that we can play on a team. As a team yourself, really think through who is who. Are you a cheerleader? Are you the examiner, the one that gets out the magnifying glass? Are you an analyst? Are you the coach, sage on the stage or coach on the side? Do you like to connect people? Do you like to start things? Do you like to finish things? Are you details oriented? Are you big picture? Or are you the devil's advocate? There are so many roles that we can play on a team. Think about how you want to work with yourself. Now, communities are key, right? Same thing to communication. We probably have lots of different preferences. Last month, October 2019, I shared a little bit more about keeping the conversation going. For those that are working with public groups, you might be using something like Mighty Networks to keep things going in the community, sharing of information, using polls, using questions, connecting others. So that's communication. Our final area that I wanted to touch on today is project management. And of course, this is one that is very near and dear to my heart. I was a program manager for many years. As I like to say, program management is project management on steroids. I often use the example, I was responsible for a lot of disaster management programming. One country in particular had been decimated by a volcano. The support to rebuild that country was really in multiple areas, smaller projects. So it might involve some educational reform. It might involve rebuilding of roads, rebuilding of records. So those are all discrete projects which roll up into this much bigger program of disaster management for X, Y, and Z country. Projects are key. And again, to equipping our staff, we want to equip our team with project management skills. And so again, can we or are we using different platforms? We might be using, again, Slack just to share information. Hopefully we're hosting status meetings. It could be a written meeting, it could be a written report that you ask people to submit every Friday. I know even in the last decade when I've been managing learning projects here and I've been the project manager, it's been about, okay, like send in your details, send in what is important, and status meetings, is it a red, needs super attention, is it a green, everything's good, or is it a yellow? We also want to make sure that we're looking at like Asana. Asana is a project management tool, as is Trello and Monday.com. They all have a slightly different focus. So, Monday.com really is what they've sell themselves as a project management tool. Asana, again, is much more project management focused. Trello might be used by solopreneurs for project management. If you're working with one other person, very easy to break it down, also include graphics, etc. So this is a whole call. I've done calls related to PlanDoTrack and Coaching Business Builder on project management, as well as, and so if you are looking at project management, again, circle around here or our different courses. We do quite a bit in the realm of project management training. My hope is that you will stay connected because, again, with these Monday calls, They're geared to really get you dropping into a lot of conversations. And as I shared last week, hope that you'll stay connected at what is known as the Conversation Sparker Zone. It's a virtual board. We talk about virtual conversations, virtual remote teams, business building for coaches, planning, doing, and tracking, virtual professionals and entrepreneurs. And so that is a focus for the individual versus the team. So if you're leading a team, best resource, and you're developing leaders, best resource right now is effective virtual conversations. If you are looking at yourself as a remote worker, that's where PlanDoTrack comes in. This is a planning guide for you. And where Remote Pathways will come in is exploring the whole landscape. I, of course, continue to do speaking and working in my area of group and team coaching as well. So lots on the go. We're stepping into the year end. I'm curious what else is important for you. Just a shout out that 2 weeks today, I'll be doing a 2020 planning session. I hope that you will drop into that. It's going to be real time. I will not be sharing that recording, at least in the wider public. It may be released at some other date, but I hope that you will be thinking about what is going to work for you. Upcoming programs, still have a few on the go. Starting in January, we will have virtual facilitation essentials. If you want to get better at leading these types of calls, check that out. It's going to be a Monday afternoon program starting, I believe, January the 6th or 13th. Next book club call, as I said, is going to be the planning session in 2 weeks. And then we'll have one call in December and take a break until the new year, back again mid-January. PlanDoTrack Facilitator Training is coming up November 15th. And the Advanced Group and Team Coaching Practicum is starting on Mondays from 3 to 4:15 later today. So with that, lots on the go. Be sure to connect in Coaching Business Builder on Instagram, and a reminder that the podcast is coming. Really excited to be bringing out Remote Pathways to you, and I hope that you'll join in, listen in through your device of choice. I'm Jennifer Britton. My question that I want to leave you with is, what are your next steps? As you think about where you're going, what do you want to add to your checklist? What are your 3 bullet points? What are the things that are going to help you move forward as a professional? As always, effectivevirtualconversations.com has some writing, but as I've been pointing to you today, potentialsrealized.com. Definitely check that out. Check out the various blog posts that are available to you. And with that, have a fantastic November. Thanks everyone for joining us. Take care. Bye-bye.